Hello, everyone, and thank you all for listening in and participating in this class. So, this class is going to be about anxiety, its definition, its root causes, and learning how to eradicate it altogether. Now, this will take training, of course, but we'll try to understand how it's possible to begin with. So, like with every other class, what's important to understand is that these classes are based on logic and reason and an extensive use of the notions of cause and effect. Why this is important to understand is that we invite you to use your logic and reason to evaluate what's being said, not to just dismiss it with the back of the hand just because we don't like it or what it's challenging maybe our fundamental belief systems, but to keep an open mind and try to use logic and reason to see if it makes sense and it holds up. This way, we have an opportunity to grow and see if our fundamental belief systems hold, and it's okay to change and to grow. That's part of training the mind. So, anxiety. Now, if we look at what anxiety is, it's defined as a feeling of worry or uneasiness with regards to an event or an uncertainty of what's to come. Now, we've all probably had these feelings of anxiety where maybe we get into a cold sweat, our heart starts pumping, or we have knots in our stomach. And if we look at, in general, the definition of anxiety as well, they're always defined from, they always come from a feeling of fear. So that's the general definition of anxiety, or if we look in most publications or definitions with regards to anxiety, they're always coming from an aspect of fear. Fear of what's to come, fear of something that we don't want to happen. So basically, we create this worry, which stems from something that we don't want to happen. And because we're looking towards the future, because it's usually having to do with a future event, we tend to exaggerate the worst possible case scenario, usually, or even any small case scenario that is on the negative side of things, and we wish it not to happen. We're fearing its outcome, basically. And this could happen anywhere. And these are the base level of anxiety, meaning that's where it's based on. It's based on fear. And if we notice that, then we could see how it could generate everything else that comes from fear. So, anxiety, which then could lead to panic attacks, because it's just we keep fueling the fear within our mind and we keep diving into it and we're fueling this fear to the point where we cannot take it anymore. So we have these very adverse reactions to fear. We have phobias are based on fear. That's the definition of a phobia, which can lead to anxiety as well. And we have other disorders that are documented that we give them different names, but they all stem from the same family, that they're all based from a basic general feeling of fear. And with regards to an outcome that has not yet occurred. And that's the important part, is that first of all, we have to understand that it's usually something that has not occurred yet, and that we're projecting in the future something that is negative, so something that we're not wanting to occur. And what's interesting about this is that if we keep asking why do I fear that possibility? Or why is it creating that fear in the first place? So this is an interesting question and something that we could actually dive into and look at within our own mind to understand. Yeah. So if we look at fear itself and we ask ourselves, oh, why do I fear it? And let's say we take some common examples, very mundane examples or trivial examples. Let's say public speaking. A lot of people are afraid of public speaking. And we ask ourselves, why does it generate fear, public speaking? And for most people, it's about making a mistake, looking bad in front of others, what are people going to think of them, and getting negatively judged, or being criticized with regards to what was done. And this happens within every different sphere, but there's like a general understanding of I don't want something to be happening. And in today's world, which is a lot of things are happening and have been happening for quite some time now, where there's a lot of situations where we might be confronted with those fears and we just might project them to happen or project the worst case scenario, or we're increasing our belief that the probability that they happen is high. And so we have the pandemic that is currently happening. We have a lot of conflict around the world. And those are also possibilities of where we could look and find fear in them. And because we don't want a certain outcome. And no matter how, this is where we're going to dive into it, but uh, no matter how adverse the situation might be, we could see that we could always find a place of inner peace. And this is going to be important. And if we go back to some of the earlier teachings that were posted, is that no matter how adverse the situation might be, there's always a way to reach at it, to find inner peace and patience. And it doesn't contradict the fact that we might do something, meaning it's not passiveness. Okay, so patience is not passiveness. And if you want to learn more on that aspect, please listen into the patient teachings, the teachings on patience that have been posted already. So now we're going to dive into fear. So why do we have these fears? And this is an interesting question because we're going to start talking about our well-being. Yeah. Because the question is why do we fear, let's say, of getting criticized? Why do we fear getting screamed at? Why do we fear getting judged? Why do we fear uh, getting hurt? And so on. And the underlying question of that is, at the underlying answer, if we really look into it, the most fundamental wish of pretty much all living beings is that we just don't want to suffer and we want to be happy. And therefore, if that's the case, those are the two most fundamental wishes of pretty much all living beings. Okay, if you ask anybody, and it's a rhetorical question, do you want to suffer? And we're not talking about pain, we're talking about this mental heaviness, negativity. Okay? No one wants to suffer. And everyone wants to be happy, to feel this inner peace and joy. Okay? The question is, and this is where we have to really look into, and we've touched upon it in earlier teachings, is that we have a fundamental belief and maybe an unquestioned belief that happiness comes from external circumstances, meaning that, or that suffering comes from external circumstances. What that means is that we believe that if someone criticizes us, then it's a situation in which I will suffer. So my suffering is dependent on an external situation or what another person will think about. And happiness in the same way, meaning if someone praises me, let's say with regards to public speaking, if I'm praised, I feel good about myself. But if I'm not praised, I don't feel good about myself. Or if I don't get a certain pain, so if something that is not bad happens to me, then I'll be fine. But if something bad happens to me, let's say my body, then I'm not fine mentally, psychologically. Okay? And we have to really come to question that fundamental belief system. Because we could come to show just by logical analysis and also from personal experiences. If we look at our personal lives and we look within our personal experiences, we could, and we use logic and reason and the notion of cause and effect to actually come and see that the fears that we're creating ourselves are not based in reality. They're not based in logic and reason. They're irrational fears, meaning that the fear that someone will judge us or someone will hurt us is not based in reality, because suffering doesn't come from external circumstances, such as pain to our body is not a cause of suffering. It's not a true cause of suffering. And if someone praises us, for instance, or we don't get a certain outcome externally, then I'm good. Or if I get what I want, such as good food, or the ability to go to the movies, or the ability to not uh, have a certain situation occur, then I'm good. And a simple analogy to come and understand where this doesn't hold logically is that, let's take, for instance, happiness. Let's say I like a certain food that I really enjoy, and I believe it to cause well-being. And this is one of the aspects where we create unhealthy habits or addiction, which is which is going to be the topic of a future teaching, just attachment. And with the word attachment, I'm borrowing the word attachment from more from Buddhism, actually, where it's defined that I'm basically believe that an external situation will be the cause of my happiness. So I'm attaching my happiness to an external circumstance, situation, pleasure, person, and so on. And therefore, this belief system is actually causing suffering. And why does it's not based in reality? Is because if I use a simple analogy to understand cause and effect, and then use the notion of cause and effect back to happiness, is that if we put water in the freezer, we get ice every single time. So the notion of cause and effect is that if I assemble the causes and conditions, I will always get the same effect. So that's the basis of science, where we do experiments to see an observable effect, to see if we could reproduce it. And we use that all the time, meaning we understand that if we try to cook, if we put food to heat, it will cook every single time. It won't do the opposite effect, such as if I put water in the freezer, I'll always get ice. It's not that at one point I'll get boiling water, the complete opposite effect. So, which actually we take it for granted, but it's very important to come back to the notion of cause and effect. Now, if the same reasoning holds for happiness, it means that if I would reproduce the cause that I believe to be happiness, to create happiness, that means I should get the same effect. So if I take food, for instance, if I believe that the certain food causes well-being and I eat that food, I say, oh, it causes me to feel good. But if I keep eating that food, it means that if I keep creating the cause, and happiness was really caused by that food, that means the more I would eat that food, the better I would feel. And yet, that's not what we observe. The more we eat the food, let's say we keep eating it back to back and we never stop, we'll soon feel uncomfortable and maybe want to vomit. And if we are seeing that food again, we probably won't want to taste it anymore. And so, how the question with regards to that analogy is that if that food was a true cause of happiness, then how would it be possible for it to transform from maybe at the beginning something good to at one point something bad? And this disproves, it refutes in both ways that the food was not a cause of suffering and it wasn't cause of happiness to begin with. Because the cause, the effect cannot completely flip based on the same cause. So basically, what it comes to show, just through logical analysis, is that the food wasn't a true cause of happiness, nor was it a true cause of suffering. Basically, it just refutes that true causation was not found, because otherwise it would produce the same effect every single time, just like just like water and ice. And why this is important, it comes to re-question our whole fundamental belief system. And we have to really think about it long and hard about this analogy, cause and effect. Effect is definite based on its cause. And if we're trying to cause a feeling, which is happiness, basically it has to be its true cause can only be from a prior state of mind, a feeling, or a way of thinking. It cannot come from an external circumstance. And the flip side of it is that if we don't get what we want, or if we believe that suffering is coming from, let's say, physical harm or physical pain, or someone screaming at us, or telling us certain things, or talking a certain way, then we will fear that outcome because we believe it to be the cause of our suffering. Whereas what this is bringing into light is that if if suffering is not coming from these external circumstances, then there's no fear to be to be created, to come into existence. Because if we don't have the cause to begin with, then we don't have its effect. So if we don't believe that external circumstances are the cause of our suffering, suffering won't arise, and therefore fear won't arise because we're no longer fearing that outcome because we know it's not the cause of suffering. And this is not to say that we're not going to be encountering adverse effects. Of course not. It's just that it gives us the opportunity, and this is what's so important here, is that we could see that there's the potential for us to let go of our old habits of thinking, of our belief systems, and it gives us an opportunity to actually overcome our fears and therefore by design our anxieties. But it comes from re-questioning our basic fundamental belief systems. And this we need to train our mind over and over and over again. This will not be easy. It's simple. What's being said is actually quite straightforward and simple. And if we really take time to look in our personal lives and our experiences, we could actually see this truth. The hard part is to sit down, meditate, the way we teach meditations here in Personal Meditation Guide, where it's about training your mind to unroot old bad habits of mind and belief systems that are not founded in reality, that are not founded in truth, that basically observable truth, just like the way we would approach science. It's just that now we're approaching how the mind works scientifically from observation and logical analysis. So this is a fantastic opportunity to just rejoice in the fact that there is a way out. And the way out is not from an external circumstance. It's about me taking the time to train my mind. And even we could even take other stances and perspectives, say, if I base myself, my happiness and my suffering is all based on external circumstances, that means I am at the mercy of everything that's happening externally to which I have no control. I have no control over the weather, what other people are going to do, what's going to happen, if my body's going to get sick or not. We have no control over our aging process and when we're going to die, or, well, we have no idea when we're going to die or how we're going to die. We have no control over that whatsoever. We could try to influence the outcomes, but ultimately, if we really think about it deeply, we do not control them. The only thing, if we take a rational analysis to all this, the only thing we could really learn to control is our mind. The ability to control the way we react to things, our ability to retake control when our mind has wandered, and the ability to change the way we react. So that's in our realm of control. And that's where happiness and suffering actually lie. It's the way we think that cause happiness and suffering. For instance, if I'm patient with the way things are, I'll stay peaceful. If I understand that my happiness, if a certain circumstance won't cause suffering, or if I lose something to begin with, is not the cause of my happiness nor my suffering, I won't have fear of losing that thing or gaining something I don't want. Right? So that's where the fear is coming from. It could come from fear of losing something I have, which causes anxiety. Because let's say I don't want to get my stuff stolen, for instance, and I keep obsessing about it. It could create a situation of anxiety. Or I don't want a negative external circumstance to occur, therefore, again, creating fear. But if we let go of the belief system that happiness and suffering are actually not coming from, because they're not, then the fear won't develop. And if fear doesn't develop, then anxiety doesn't develop. And we actually notice within our own stream of mind is that we understand that our feelings come and go. Sometimes they're intense, sometimes they're less intense. This realization is also important because it comes to show that our feelings are impermanent. They're not set in stone. And if we understand how they function, we have the potential to actually eradicate them. If we understand their causes, and basically we try not to repeat the causes of mind that create suffering, then we'll never get the effect. So there is the potentiality. So that means in every one of us, we have the potential to overcome our fears and our anxieties by changing the way our, by changing our habits of mind. And so all the ways we think are just habits. They're habits of mind. And this is also, by saying that, gives us the opportunity to change. It says it's just a habit of mind. Yes, they might be strong habits, but the fact that they're just habits of mind also comes to show us that we have the potential of getting rid of those bad habits and creating good habits. And that's the point of these teachings and the meditation, the accompanying meditations. They offer us the ability to reset our mind, but it takes training. That means you might be listening to it once, maybe listen to it many times, again and again, and do the meditations again and again. It's like going to the gym for the body. Getting in shape with your body is something that needs uh, continual repetition. We need to keep at it. The mind works the same way. But now you have the confidence through logical reasoning of cause and effect that you're going to get the outcome you desire. This is not just about relaxing the mind. This is about training the mind so that you learn to take control of your feelings, being able to let go of some and cultivating the ones that create happiness and letting go of the ones that cause suffering. This is what we're training. And that's why it's so important, the message of repeating the exercises again and again and again. It's exactly like training the body, training the mind is the same thing. We need to repeat, and we have to never stop doing it. And you'll see, and just try it. If it's hard to believe, especially maybe some with a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress, uh, try it, experiment, try these meditations and repeat them and see for yourself the the effect that it will have in your lives and in your mind, how it will create a space of inner peace. Now, one important aspect with regards to when we're starting learning to train the mind and we're out there, like our day-to-day lives, and these adverse situations occur. We need tools to be able to recover. And going straight to the thought saying, this is not a cause of happiness, this is not a cause of suffering, it shouldn't affect me. Sometimes flipping the mind, from one extreme to the next is impossible. We're not used to it. Our mind will resist and push back. And we won't want to believe it because we want to believe that it's because of that external circumstance. It's because of what's happening outside of my mind. That's where the suffering is coming from. Our belief system are so entrenched, we're so convinced of that like flipping the mind just logically won't happen. Like just by reasoning through it. Our reasoning, even though we might understand the logic, our feelings are way too strong to overcome it. So we need other mechanisms, other tools at our disposal to be able to give us that distance with our feelings. And we hear them all the time. These are simple tools that help us create distance to those feelings. Breathing, coming back to your breathing, just breathing. Concentrate on your breathing, bring your mind to the breathing, and let go of everything else. So that we've heard that one probably many times. Another one, maybe a bit less familiar to a lot of people, is imagine you're a rock or a piece of wood. Because what does a rock or a piece of wood think about? Nothing. So this imagination, we're using our imagination to cut the flow of thoughts. We're cutting the fuel to those emotions of anxiety and fear. And this, and we stay there, and we try not to react to anything else. It's like a shut off valve where we're cutting off the fuel or the electricity to those emotions so that it shuts off. And then it gives us space in our mind. It gives us the ability to take a step back and reevaluate the situation and try to bring the logic and reason, such as where is the true cause of happiness? Where is the true cause of suffering? Happiness and suffering don't come from external circumstances. They come from the way I'm looking at the situation. They come at the way I'm I'm spinning the situation. And what I'm projecting as saying, this is a cause of fear, this is a cause of suffering. And I keep harping on it. And the point of control that we have is that ability to look at our mind, step back from it, and reevaluate, and then act according to a new state of mind. One of them, if we go back to our old habits of fear, it will lead to anxiety and suffering. Our mind will be very agitated, and then it will cause also physical manifestations such as tension and sweats and disease and immune system problems and other deficiencies and other whatever panacea of problems that we could have with our body starts from our mind. If our mind is calmer and peaceful, our mind is also more supple, not as tense. And we heal better, we heal faster. And therefore, it gives us the ability to choose a path and saying, okay, I take some distance, I could reevaluate. And the importance of the meditation of training is where we step back from everything and we give the space in our mind to train our mind and say, let me train my mind so that when I go back into the real world, when I go back into my daily busy life, my mind is more ready. It's more at ease. It's more ready to face these adversities. And it's the same thing with usually a good analogy is first responders. First responders like firefighters or police that have to be on the scene when there's an adverse situation. What kind of, or let's say more ambulance, someone that has to take care of us if someone's sick. Do we want a first responder that is fearful, stressed, and anxious, that might make mistakes because his mind is agitated and not thinking straight? Or would we want a first responder who is calm, lucid, and doing the right procedure when needed to? Basically, why that analogy is important is that we have to become first responders to our life, to the adversities that will come in our life. We'll be faced with violence, and sickness, aging, and death. So therefore, we're becoming peaceful with these circumstances, and we'll be able to also become an anchor for other people around us so that we could help others out of their fears and anxieties as well. Thank you.